Hi, this is John with Flat 6 Motorsports. Today we're going to show you how to install diverter valves on your 991.2 Carrera. And before we jump into the actual install of this, let's just go over what the diverter valve is. So a diverter valve basically releases pressure back into the intake charge. So when you come off of boost pressure is building up in the system, and when you back off or the transmission shifts gears, that boost pressure needs to be released in the system. It does that through the diverter valve and dumps back into an inlet tube. Now, these are prone because they are plastic housing. Over time, they start to leak, and a lot of people will replace them for that reason. But even if you tune the car, the higher boost pressure sometimes starts to interfere with the diverter valve, and you start getting boost leaks where the overall boost limit's going to drop and cause a drop in power as well. So we recommend replacing these with our Flat 6 Motorsports by EVOMS upgraded diverter valves. Now, this is a fully machined CNC billet part. High quality through and through. We've tested this on many applications over the years, probably about 15 years running now with the EVOMS design. We run them on the 991 turbos with 900 plus horsepower, and they work great all day. So this is an upgrade that makes sense for somebody even with a stock car, but particularly if you're going to tune it and run higher horsepower, we absolutely recommend these. And it just goes on and replaces the factory component, but it's going to hold a lot more power and perform consistently. And so in the real world, what that does is gives you a lot better feel when you're on. First of all, you're going to get 100% of the boost pressure that's getting sent to the car. It's not going to leak out, so whatever the boost pressure target's set at, you're going to get in the motor, which is going to improve output. But also between gear changes or when you let off, it's going to work much more effectively, dumping that air back in and closing back up. So with a PDK being pretty rapid, there's going to be a little reduction in the boost lag as the turbo spools back up because the air is going to dump, close back, boost is going to come back in. So this is much more effective at doing that than the factory one. So there's also a performance feel benefit as well, and actually recirculating air quicker is going to help with overall performance. So with that aside, let's jump into the install and we'll show you how these go on.
Before installing the diverter valves, make sure your car is safely lifted in the air. If you're using jack stands, you only need to lift the rear of the car. Make sure to loosen your lug nuts before lifting the car. Because we'll be disconnecting electrical connections, it is best to disconnect the battery. Begin by removing both rear wheels to access the fender liner. Next, you need to remove the torque screws holding the fender liner in place. You do not need to remove the entire liner. You will now have access to the screws mounting the bumper to the car. Remove these two screws. Repeat this process for the other side. Next, you'll need to remove the 7 torque screws along the bottom side of the bumper. Coming back to the top, you'll now remove the fans and intake ducts from the car. A firm pull on the cover and fans will remove them from being seated. Make sure to disconnect the fans before fully removing them. Remove the oil and coolant cap to take the plastic shrouding off around it. Be careful when removing the coolant cap, as there still might be pressure in the system. Replace the caps after removing the shrouding. Next, remove the 2 torque screws holding the taillights in place. You can now safely disconnect and remove the taillights. After removing both taillights, remove the 4 torque screws on top of the bumper. Remove the torque screws found on both sides of the bumper where the taillight sits. You'll need to disconnect the plugs that are located where the taillight sits. There are 2 plugs to disconnect on the passenger side and 1 on the driver. With some help, you can now safely remove the rear bumper. After removing the bumper, remove the intake ducts. A firm pull will take them off. Loosen the clamps connecting the charge pipe to the Y pipe and intake hose from the airbox. Then, disconnect the hoses. Loosen the clamps connecting the charge pipe and the inlet pipe to the turbo. Then, disconnect the hoses. Next, you'll be removing the intercooler housing. First, use a T30 to remove the 2 screws on top and the 2 on the bottom. Use a 10mm socket to remove the 7 bolts holding the housing to the car. Next, use a T25 to remove the yaw sensor. There's also one T25 screw to remove from the heat shield on the back of the car. Remove the intercooler housing. To remove the diverter valve, start with removing the blow-off valve line. Then, loosen the clamp connecting the diverter valve to the pressure line. Next, remove the diverter valve by pulling it firmly out from the charge pipe. After removing the diverter valve, loosen the clamp and remove the housing that connects the diverter valve to the charge pipe. Before installing the new diverter valve, install the elbow piece for the blow-off valve line. Install the clamp and housing from the original diverter valve that connects it to the charge pipe. Lastly, install the diverter valve to the charge pipe. Then, connect the pressure line to the diverter valve and connect the blow-off valve line as well. After installing the new diverter valve, you can reinstall the intercooler housing. Repeat this process for the diverter valve on the other side. Thanks for watching this video. We hope you found this informative. If you have any further questions, feel free to comment below or visit us at flat6.com for further information.